what would you say to Americans who fear that this is more and more concentration of power in the White House and the executive?
Well, this really brings back the Constitution. This is what it's all about, and this is really the opposite of that. I mean, the question is fine, but it's the opposite. The Constitution has been brought back.
Good morning. Are we bracing for Supreme Court impact? What do you?
Yeah, let's see what rights they, revoke today. We'll see where they fall out. They've given us some good rulings on, for example, the due process front, and they've given us some bad rulings on the due process front. So, we never know where they're going to land.
What's your feeling on birthright citizenship? This is a how many-year-old precedent?
Yeah, so when the Reagan-appointed judge, John Coffenauer, first got his hands on that executive order by Donald Trump trying to revoke the constitutional guarantee of birthright citizenship, he said, and I quote, "This is blatantly unconstitutional." And he also said, where were the lawyers in the room when Trump was signing this? Now, of course, the lawyers were in the room and they knew it was unconstitutional, but they did it to be exactly where they are today, get it up to the Supreme Court to see if the Supreme Court is comfortable rewriting the Constitution as they did in the presidential immunity ruling.
Yeah. What your reaction yesterday to the Planned Parenthood?
They won't be satisfied until they, try to interfere with women's privacy rights to make their own reproductive health decisions in every way they can. Steph, I raised 5 daughters. I've got a lot of granddaughters now. And it's still insane to me and even unfathomable that a bunch of old, rich, white men are going to make reproductive health decisions for women without their consent and over their objection. What the hell country are we living in? Unfortunately, it is today's America.
Yeah. Sidebar, counselor, hottest grandpa ever. Okay, let's... I'm allowed to sidebar.
Yeah, you are.
Okay.
You are.
Speaking of the Supreme Court, this is just tells you everything about where we are today. You talk about all the time, Glenn. Former Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy offered a dire warning for the U.S. yesterday that the hostile, fractious discourse and threats to judges were gutting democracy and putting freedom at risk. So this was a global threats to the justice system, a warning to America conference he spoke at that focused on threats to the rule of law. He and other current and former judges from the U.S., along with judges from countries that have experienced authoritarian crackdowns and other assaults on the rule of law. I mean, and he was, as you know, first appointed by Ford, appointed to the Supreme Court by Reagan, unanimously confirmed by the Senate. This is not, and I'm still dying to know what happened and how Brett Kavanaugh got on the Supreme Court. But anyway.
What Donald Trump said to him that made him do like a double take. Like,
yeah,
what?
Quadruple
what did you just
take.
say to me?
Yeah.
And here's the thing.
Yeah.
He's not the kind of guy who is prone to hyperbole.
Yeah.
So when he said what's going on is, quote, gutting democracy and putting freedom at risk, how about some of the Republican members of Congress pay attention to that?
Yeah. He said many in the rest of the world look to the U.S. to see what democracy is, to see what democracy ought to be. Aristotle said freedom can die, and he was right. Aristotle said democracy can die. He's right. Democracy doesn't live on autopilot. Of course, he didn't mention Trump by name, but he didn't have to, right?
Right. Yeah, we all know who he was talking about.
This morning, the Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law in striking down the excessive use of nationwide injunctions to interfere with the normal functioning of the executive branch. The Supreme Court has stopped the presidency itself. That's what they've done. And really, it's been an amazing period of time this last hour. There are people elated all over the country. I've seen such happiness and spirit. Sometimes you don't see that, but this case is very important. I was elected on a historic mandate, but in recent months we've seen a handful of radical left judges effectively try to overrule the rightful powers of the president to stop the American people from getting the policies that they voted for in record numbers. It was a grave threat to democracy, frankly, and instead of merely ruling on the immediate cases before them, these judges have attempted to dictate the law for the entire nation. In practice, this meant that if any one of the nearly 700 federal judges disagreed with the policy of a duly elected president of the United States, he or she could block that policy from going into effect or at least delay it for many years, tie it up in the court system. This was a colossal abuse of power which never occurred in American history prior to recent decades.
Hey, are you traveling this summer? Will you leave instructions for your house sitter, the name and number of your vet, maybe, the code to your alarm system? Think about the steps you take to prepare for vacation, and you'll get a sense of what goes into a knockbox. Just go to theknockbox.com, use the code Stephanie. Knockbox is a complete system that helps you organize all of your accounts, possessions, and estate plans for your next of kin. Each knockbox, that's Knockbox, comes with a comprehensive checklist that helps ensure you add everything they'll need to manage your estate when you are gone. From your funeral directives to your insurance policies, even the keys to your storage unit, the Knockbox helps you organize it all. If you've got a household, you need a Knockbox. Right now, Stephanie Miller listeners save 16% off the Knockbox of your choice. Just go to theknockbox.com/Stephanie. That's theknockbox.com/Stephanie to get 16% off. Stay calm, get organized today.